Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we have another what's inside video, and we're going to be tearing down this coolant bottle. Now this coolant bottle came out of a Chevy Cruze. It was leaking. It had some cracking and pinholes here on the bottom. But these are actually a little bit more advanced than what they seem like. There's actually a couple different chambers in there, so I figured we'd cut one open. Now before we go ahead and do so, guys, if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button down below. Definitely smash that like button. And with that said, let's go ahead and get started on today's teardown. So we are looking at our reservoir, guys, and I have it clamped up to my vise here. And the reason why I want to do a teardown on this is because these usually have steps or layers in them, or little mini chambers. You'll find that cooling can only go in one way and come out a certain way, and vice versa, depending on which hose it's coming out of or where you're putting it into. This video is not going to be really too in-depth here. My whole idea was trying to cut the tank maybe down the middle, but then I realized that may not be such a good idea because it may not show all the different layers. So what I'm going to be doing is chopping it up right here alongside it right there. And of course, what we're going to be using today to chop this off is our Sawzall again. This seems to be the tool of choice for doing these videos. So I'm going to go ahead and set you guys up on a time lapse because I anticipate this is going to take me a while. Instead of you guys just watching me struggle or manipulating to keep it on the vise from cutting it up, we're just going to go ahead and time lapse it for you. Now we're going to be making two cuts before we begin. I'm going to cut it in half this way, and then what I'm going to do is one of the halves I'm going to cut this way and just kind of break the seam on them so you guys get a good understanding of what the layers are. Now that we've cut our tank up, guys, before we get into the internal workings of it, just wanted to share and explain to you guys how these tanks fail. Now, this particular one, obviously, we took it out of the car and replaced it because it had failed. And this one particularly failed right about here. I don't know how well you guys can see it, but I was getting a coolant leak from here. It was just basically leaking out. I did make a video of me replacing this on the car, and you can see it just dripping out, making its way out of there. Now, when it was under high pressure and the car would warm up a little bit, so when I ran the engine, I pressure tested it, it would actually push out a stream, but if the engine was cold down, it would just have a drip, and it would just drip all over. So that is why this one failed. Now, this failure is very common. About 90% of these fail due to some sort of cracking or the plastic just, overstressing itself. I've seen them also fail here at the seams where they are fused together, because these are two halves put together, and that's where they commonly will fail as well. Aside from that, there's not a whole lot more that can fail on them. I mean, these things are pretty simple in design. If you're replacing it, it's because you have a leak somewhere, which means it's either cracked or split or something of that nature happened to it. And that is the more common failure on these. So now that we've got that covered, we're going to go ahead and move into the next clip where we talk about the internal workings. But I just wanted to explain to you guys what common failure patterns on these style tanks are. So we are looking at our coolant tank. I went ahead and I cleaned up my mess. Vicing it, guys, a lot of coolant and water was coming out of it. Got all over my table and everything, but we cleaned it up. What I also did was I rinsed these off with a little bit of water just to get any of the remaining coolant out. And this is our tank. Now this is the portion that we cut completely in half, and if you guys are surprised, well, like I said, these tanks are not just fully open. You guys can see there's a bunch of passages in here and little redirects. To show you guys the reason why I cut this one in half on this portion, I really didn't go in the middle, because you will notice that the big flow outlet here is only connected through here, and in order for the coolant from this side to go all the way through, it's going to have to flow out through the various channels, which would be through these top holes to come in this tank to go in here to be able to going through this passage, which is the corner of where this tank is and this outlet is. It's a very complex system. To be honest with you, even cutting this apart doesn't really explain to me how it flows in here. But either way, you guys can see on the halfway cutaway that this is just more than just a bottle that you fill up with coolant. these systems that are closed off and have expansion tanks like this, or as what Chevy calls this, a surge tank is what it's referred to from Chevy. They have a lot of different baffle systems in here to keep the coolant in check is the best way to put it. Because you can see it's not just an empty bottle that fills up with coolant like you would on most overflow tanks. Now this is the other half that we cut off here, and this was, let's see if I can figure out, it was together like this, and it was on there like this when it was originally in there. So if we're looking at scope to scope, you'll see same thing. We have a lot of different baffles in here and limiting the coolant travel on where it can go. And if you were to cut that in half, you will see just these little reservoir areas that store the coolant. Now to me this is kind of weird. I don't know why you would have just a tiny little storage area here and then a little hole to release it. Maybe what they're doing is trying to keep the coolant in a certain place with temperature differences. I'm not exactly sure what the whole benefit of that is and why there's so many. Originally, before I cut this open, I knew that there was some sort of baffle system in here, but what I thought was that there would just be a baffle right about here, and it would have smaller holes leading down to the bottom portion, and then I figured it would have maybe a centerline baffle through there, cutting the tank into thirds. But it's clear to me now that this thing is not only in thirds, it's actually in like fourths and fifths. There's so many little chambers, because peeking through here, there's another little square area here. It cuts off right there, and there's the wall here, and then there's another area here. So there's about 5 or 6 different chambers in this where the coolant can possibly go. It just goes to show that these things are pretty complex, especially when you have a sealed off system like the Chevy Cruze does, and that's the tank that we took off of that car. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. This was a quick teardown video. This doesn't really get too detailed in there because I don't know what these areas are. I just decided to tear it apart, to see what's in there and to make this video and show you guys what's in there. But as far as how all this works, it is beyond me. I'm not really going to look it up and try to figure it out. But my only reason why I would think they would do this is just to keep the coolant in check and keep it from sloshing around, and also chamber it for pressure differences and for degree differences, because I would assume it's going to come in hot here. They probably let it sit up top and let it naturally cool down a little bit before it makes its way back down to the high flow out there. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Please comment, like, and subscribe because it definitely helps the channel grow. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.